The steam rising from the sewer grate hissed like a dying breath, masking the smell of rain and stale grease, but it couldn't hide the metallic tang of fresh blood. Sophia Benید stood frozen in the back doorway of the diner, a heavy trash bag dangling from her hand. It was 2 a.m. Her feet throbbed, her apron was stained with coffee, and she just wanted to go home. She expected rats in the alley. She expected the stray cat, Barnaby. She did not expect a man in a bespoke, blood-soaked suit slumped against the dumpster. He was striking even in ruin, sharp cheekbones, raven hair plastered to his forehead by sweat, and a tattoo of a black dragon peeking out from a slashed collar. But it was what he was holding that stole the air from Sophia's lungs. 3 tiny, identical bundles. Triplets. They were wrapped in silk, wailing softly against the freezing drizzle. Sophia took an instinctive step forward, her former medical training overriding her fear. "Sir, you're hurt." The man's head snapped up. His eyes were dark, dangerous, and hazy with pain. With a trembling hand, he raised a silver pistol and aimed it straight at the center of her chest. "Walk away," he rasped, his voice a low, terrifying growl. "Or die." Sophia looked at the gun, then at the arterial blood pooling beneath his leg, and finally at the 3 shivering babies clinging to a dying killer. "You can shoot me," Sophia said, dropping the trash bag. "But who's going to feed them when you bleed out in the next 10 minutes? The pistol wavered, then clattered to the wet pavement as the stranger's eyes rolled back. Sophia didn't waste a second. She didn't have the strength to be gentle. She grabbed the handle of the triple carrier, a marvel of engineering that probably cost more than her car, and shoved it through the propped-open rear door. Then she grabbed the man by the lapels of his ruined suit. He was dead weight, heavy with muscle and the dampness of the rain, but adrenaline gave her the leverage to drag him over the threshold, his polished shoes scraping harsh lines against the concrete. She kicked the steel door shut, plunging them into the dim yellow light of the storage room. It smelled of yeast, damp cardboard, and now copper. She bolted the lock, her breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. The babies were starting to fret, a low harmony of whimpers echoing off the metal shelving, but they had to wait. Sophia fell to her knees beside the man, her hands trembling until she took a deep breath and let the muscle memory of med school take over. Assess. Stabilize. She grabbed the heavy-duty kitchen shears from her apron pocket and sliced through the layers of soaking wet silk and cotton. The fabric tore with a sickening rip, revealing a jagged entry wound just above his hip. Dark, sluggish blood pulsed with every beat of his heart. It was messy, but the bullet seemed to have missed the major arteries. She reached for the emergency first aid kit kept near the deep freeze, but as she turned back with a wad of gauze, a hand clamped around her wrist. It was a weak grip, but the intent was lethal. He was awake, eyes wide and feral, thrashing against the concrete floor as if fighting off ghosts. "Don't," she hissed, prying at his fingers. He tried to rise, his free hand groping blindly for the weapon that was no longer there. The sudden movement tore his wound further, fresh blood soaking into the knee of her jeans. "Where is it?" he snarled, his voice a jagged whisper, his eyes unfocused, but burning with violence. "Where is my gun?" Sophia shoved him back down, putting her entire body weight on his uninjured shoulder to pin him. He snarled, teeth bared, ready to snap her arm, but she pointed a blood-slicked finger toward the carriers near the sacks of potatoes. "Listen to me," she ordered, her voice cutting through his delirium. "You have 3 infants 10 feet away. I am the only thing standing between them and social services. If you fight me, you bleed out. If you bleed out, they die. Your choice." The brutal logic pierced the fog of his pain. His grip on her wrist loosened, then fell away. His chest heaved as he stared at the ceiling, the fight draining out of him as quickly as the blood. He turned his head toward the babies, watched them for a heartbeat, and then his eyes fluttered shut. Sophia let out a shaky breath. She spotted the silver pistol where she'd kicked it near the entryway. Picking it up, it felt heavy and cold, an alien object in a place meant for baking bread. She walked over to the industrial ingredient bins, lifted the heavy plastic lid marked all-purpose, and buried the weapon deep inside the mound of white flour. When Min Sun Jun next surfaced, it was not to the scent of antiseptic and sterile linens, but to the overwhelming smell of frying oil and yeast. The light was better now, though still sickly, coming from a single exposed bulb overhead. He was lying on a makeshift bed of empty potato sacks, his lower body bandaged roughly with strips of white apron cloth. The pain in his side was a dull, throbbing drumbeat. He was profoundly weak, a feeling he hadn't experienced since childhood. He saw the woman. Sophia. She was kneeling by the triple carrier, fiddling with a dusty, cracked container of powdered milk. He tracked her movements, his eyes cool and assessing. She was still wearing the absurd red apron, but the calmness in her hands as she mixed the formula betrayed the waitress persona. "You're awake," she stated without looking up. Her voice was flat, exhausted. "It's been 6 hours. You're lucky. I stopped the bleeding, but you'll need real surgery. This is just holding things together." Sun Jun tried to sit up, a purely reflexive action, but the sharp agony in his hip stopped him cold. He fell back with a grunt. "Where am I? And where did you acquire these skills?" She finally turned, her expression unreadable. "This is the storage basement of Mama Ray's. And I was 2 years into my pre-med degree before reality hit me with a $50,000 tuition bill and a mother who needed palliative care." She tossed a bottle of the diner's lowest quality white milk toward him. "Drink that. It's better than nothing." Before he could process the insult or the information, the chaos erupted. All 3 bundles, who had been unnervingly silent, decided in unison that they were starving. Kenji, Hiro, and Akio. Their cries were piercing, amplified by the concrete walls, sounding less like infants and more like 3 tiny, relentless sirens. Sophia grimaced. "Great. Feeding time." She had mixed just 2 bottles. She looked from the carrier to the inert, wounded man. "I need you to hold this one." She placed the 3rd, whimpering baby, Akio, on his chest. Sun Jun froze. His empire was built on steel and fear. His hands were meant for weapons and contracts, not this tiny, squirming, helpless bundle. He stared at the child as if it were an unexploded grenade. But the baby rooted against his chest, instinctively seeking warmth, and the noise level dropped slightly. Sun Jun felt an uncomfortable jolt, not pain, but something akin to protective heat. He was powerless, dependent on this tired waitress. And yet, watching her expertly juggle the bottles and soothe the other 2 infants with a low, rhythmic pat, he realized she held more command in this dimly lit basement than any of his lieutenants ever held in a boardroom. She was triage, logistics, and security all rolled into a red apron. He hated the helplessness, but beneath the pain and the fury, a grudging respect began to settle. She is dangerous, he thought. Dangerous because she cares. A brutal, heavy thump from the street above cut through the basement's damp silence, sending a cascade of plaster and flour dust scattering over the potato sacks. The triplets, instantly agitated, ramped their cries to a terrified shriek. Sun Jun's eyes snapped open, clearing of pain and fever instantly, and fixed on the ceiling. "Silence them," he ordered, his voice thin but laced with ice. "They're babies, not machines." Sophia snapped back, scrambling to cover the infants' faces against the debris. The thump was followed by the screech of tires, too fast for the city, and the synchronized thwack-thwack-thwack of multiple heavy doors slamming shut. "Black SUV," Sun Jun confirmed, his gaze locked on the low, wooden ceiling beams. "Professional. They're here for the cleanup." The door to the main kitchen, just above them, splintered inward with a violent crush. Footsteps followed, not the familiar weary shuffle of diner staff, but the calculated, echoing pace of men wearing reinforced boots. They heard Korean voices, urgent and sharp, the language of command. Sophia gripped the triple carrier handle, sweat chilling on her neck. She listened as the men swept the dining room, their heavy steps growing closer to the kitchen's back corner where the access hatch was bolted down. A furious, clipped shout in Korean confirmed their discovery. The alley door had been recently tampered with. The pounding started immediately, not on the metal door, but on the floorboards directly overhead. They were going to save time and simply cut through the ceiling. Sun Jun, pale but determined, pointed a trembling finger toward the grimy metal grate near the broken fryer drain. Coal chute. Emergency runoff. It connects to a trunk line 60 yards west. You go first. The collective wail of Kenji, Hiro, and Akio was a localized earthquake, surely audible on the street now. Sophia snatched the silver pistol from the flour bin where she'd hidden it, shoving the cold weight into Sun Jun's palm. If they breach that wood before I can get them through, you buy us 10 seconds. She didn't wait for a reply. Using the rolling pin, she levered the rusty grate open. A rush of foul, earthen air and the stench of waste assailed them. She shoved the carriers, one by one, into the tight, dark space. Sun Jun followed, falling more than lowering himself into the chute with a gasp of agony. Just as Sophia pulled herself free from the coal chute and blindly grabbed the heavy metal pin, a deafening explosion ripped through the ceiling. Not a door, but the entire back wall of the kitchen blew out. A wave of intense, dry heat washed over them, and blinding orange flame erupted above the floorboards. Incendiary, Sun Jun croaked, dragging himself deeper into the fetid tunnel, cradling the gun. No search. Just destroy. The Viper doesn't want witnesses. Sophia scrambled after him, pulling the pin shut just as the raging inferno consumed the diner above. She was a woman who lived by tips and minimum wage, and now the last vestiges of her normal life, her job, her apron, her stability, were dissolving into ash and smoke. She was a fugitive, crawling through the sewer system with a wounded, dangerous man and his billion-dollar babies. The air in Sophia's cramped, fourth-floor walk-up reeked of 3-day-old takeout and desperation, a stark contrast to the cologne still clinging to Sun Jun's bandages. After an agonizing, subterranean trek, they had emerged blocks away and made a frantic dash to the only place Sophia knew, her home. She locked the 3 deadbolts, leaned against the chipped wooden door, and finally allowed herself a shuddering breath. The fire in the alley was gone, but the terror was not. Sun Jun, despite his injury, had commandeered the single overstuffed armchair, looking like a shattered sculpture of power in the tiny room. The triplets were lined up on Sophia's thin mattress, nestled in their designer carrier, the only piece of luxury in the whole apartment. "This is not a safe house," Sun Jun stated, his voice tight. "It's a fire hazard waiting to happen. The walls are paper." "It's also where you won't be recognized," Min Sun Jun, Sophia retorted, pulling out a stained map of the city and spreading it over her small kitchen table. "And if you're going to be a hostile guest, you can at least try to be quiet. Neighbors." He ignored the warning. "You risk everything for strangers and a criminal." "Why?" "I don't know who you are, but I know who they are." Sophia pointed at the carriers. "They're babies. And now, thanks to you and your men, I'm homeless and a fugitive. You owe me." Sun Jun watched her, then sighed, a sound that seemed to cost him energy. "The triplets are keys, Sophia. Their biometrics, their DNA profile, the unique structure of their irises, they are coded access points. My late wife set it up. They unlock a series of secure accounts and encrypted digital vaults. Billions. My legitimate assets, untouchable unless my heir, or in this case, my 3 simultaneous heirs, is present." Sophia stared from the man to the babies. "So they're just expensive passwords?" "They're my legacy, and the reason I'm hunted," he corrected, his voice hardening with pride. "My lieutenant, the Viper, wanted control of the Black Dragon Syndicate's illegal ventures, but he crossed a line, trafficking children. I stopped him. He tried to kill me, murdered my wife, and now he needs the triplets to access the funds I'd put out of his reach." The conversation was abruptly interrupted. Akio, nestled in the middle, started fussing. Sophia reached for the powdered milk, but Kenji and Hiro were already joining the chorus. In a matter of seconds, the tiny apartment was filled with the deafening sound of triple infant hunger. Sun Jun winced. "I thought you were a strategist." Sophia threw the empty packet at him. "A strategist requires resources. I have exactly $12 in my account, and that container of powdered milk I grabbed from the diner is the last of it." As she spoke, a key scraped loudly in the lock, followed by a heavy knock on the door. "Sophia, I saw the news. Is that your friend's fancy car? The landlord is here. I told him he should charge you extra for company. The fear hit Sophia with paralyzing speed. She hadn't expected a neighbor, let alone her landlord, to show up. Sun Jun, however, was already moving, dragging his injured leg across the floor. He lifted a heavy, decorative table lamp. Is he alone? Usually, Sophia whispered. But the sound of multiple heavy-soled shoes ascending the creaking stairs told her everything she needed to know. The landlord hadn't just come to complain. He'd come to cash in. The silence of the apartment was an illusion, thin as the walls separating them from the building's other desperate occupants. Sun Jun lay motionless, saving every iota of strength while Sophia paced. They were running on fumes. The last of the powdered milk was gone, and the babies, now placated with sugar water, would not be fooled for long. We need resources, Sophia announced, pulling on a faded hooded sweatshirt, trying to look as inconspicuous as possible. Formula, diapers, and those bandages are contaminated. I need sterile supplies and antibiotics, minimum. Sun Jun pushed himself up, his face a mask of strain. I go. They will be looking for a man in a ruined suit, not a homeless man in a baseball cap. And if you collapse from blood loss in the middle of an aisle, who picks up the pieces? Sophia countered, meeting his glare with one of her own. You are an exiled mafia boss. I am a waitress with student debt. Guess who blends better? She scribbled a detailed list of supplies, noting the exact brand of formula the Triplets seemed to tolerate. Sun Jun gave her a heavy, gold money clip containing a thick wad of high-denomination cash. Only use singles and small tens. Use cash. No cards. No eye contact. If you see a shadow, drop everything and run. The walk to the nearest 24-hour chain pharmacy felt like an eternity. Every car, every siren, every pedestrian was a potential threat. Sophia kept her head down, the weight of the money clip a constant, nervous pulse in her pocket. Inside the fluorescent glare of the store, the tension became almost unbearable. She moved methodically, grabbing formula, pain relievers, and surgical dressing kits. As she reached the register, she noticed him, a burly, low-level thug standing near the greeting card aisle, talking into a cheap burner phone. He wasn't looking at her, but his stance was wrong, too rigid, too focused on the exits. Sophia quickly paid using the small bills, her hands shaking slightly. As she pushed the cart toward the exit, the thug disconnected his call and started moving toward her. He wasn't running, but he wasn't browsing either. Thinking fast, Sophia suddenly stumbled near a display of floor cleaner. A large bottle of industrial-strength bleach toppled over, splashing across the aisle. As the thug reached her, startled by the noise, Sophia dropped her bag of groceries, deliberately tripping him over her foot. He went down hard on the slick, bleach-coated tile. She didn't wait to see him recover. She snatched the essential bag containing the medicine and formula and bolted out the emergency exit. She heard the man curse loudly behind her, the ammonia smell of the bleach temporarily incapacitating him. She didn't stop running until she reached the fire escape of her building. Heart hammering against her ribs, she climbed the rusty steps, driven by the thought of the 3 hungry babies and the wounded man waiting for her. When she finally burst into the apartment, panting, Sun Jun was leaning against the door, his eyes dark with relief and something like admiration. Shadowers, he murmured, taking the bag from her hand. You were marked the moment you bought those supplies. We need to leave. Now. The frantic escape from the apartment, executed under the cover of a freezing morning fog, left Sun Jun depleted and feverish. They had secured temporary sanctuary in a derelict warehouse near the old docks, a place of last resort, chosen for its vast space and absolute desolation. The cold, however, was their new enemy. Sun Jun shivered violently beneath a pile of discarded tarps and cardboard boxes. His skin was burning, slick with sweat that rapidly cooled in the massive, echoing space. His breath came in shallow, ragged spurts. The wound, which Sophia had cleaned and redressed using the stolen supplies, was hot to the touch. The antibiotics wouldn't kick in fast enough. He was drifting in and out of consciousness, his handsome features contorted in a silent, agonizing fight. Sophia sat beside him, terrified. The triplets were sleeping soundly, their feeding schedule temporarily satiated, but the silence was menacing. She focused on the man, holding a cloth soaked in cold, rusty water to his forehead. He was strong, ruthlessly efficient, but sepsis respected no title. Sumin, he suddenly mumbled, his voice thick and unrecognizable. I'm sorry, Sumin. He thrashed against the pane, briefly opening eyes that were cloudy and unfocused. He wasn't seeing Sophia. He was seeing a ghost. She was so beautiful, he whispered, a broken sound. Always smiling. I told her I'd protect her. I told her. He trailed off, his jaw clenching. He tried to grab Sophia's hand, mistaking it for his lost wife's. Forgive me. The viper, he was faster. The confession of grief and guilt, wrenched from him by the fever, was a window into the ruthless man's soul, a crack in the granite facade. Sophia felt a strange, protective warmth bloom in her chest, a dangerous empathy that went beyond their forced survival pact. He wasn't just a boss. He was a widower, a victim of betrayal, a father clinging to his children while haunted by loss. The severity of the infection demanded immediate action. The bullet had done too much internal damage, and she realized the wound needed to be reopened and properly drained, a procedure impossible to do safely in a freezing warehouse without proper anesthesia. But he would die otherwise. Sophia positioned the flickering lantern, sterilized her smallest scalpel, a razor from a utility knife, and gently leaned over him. You need to trust me, Min Sun-jun, she murmured, steadying her trembling hands. This is going to hurt more than a bullet. As she pressed the cold steel to his skin, he let out a choked cry, but surprisingly, he didn't fight. Instead, he gripped the cold concrete floor, trusting the waitress with the fate of his life and his throne. Sophia worked fast, her breath held tight, her mind hyper-focused on the pulsing infection. She was back in the emergency room, not a diner basement, not a derelict warehouse. When the last of the pus was expelled and the wound sealed again, Sun-jun fell back, completely spent. He looked up at Sophia, his gaze finally clear, the fever slightly broken. He saw her face streaked with dirt and sweat, her expression one of fierce, protective determination. You saved me, he whispered, the admission a challenge to his own pride. You saved yourself, Sophia corrected, wiping his brow. You held still. Now you rest. We have bigger problems than infection. The emergency drainage had bought them time, but Sun-jun was still critically weak. The warehouse remained freezing, and the need for legitimate, high-grade medication was paramount. They'll be watching the hospitals and the major pharmacies, Sophia stated, pacing the length of a faded forklift. We need specialized meds, quickly, and that requires moving in the shadows they know, not mine. Sun-jun, propped against a stack of crates, looked grim. There is only one person in this city who deals in that type of unregistered supply chain, and he despises me. A low-tier arms dealer and physician named Dr. On. He operates near the meatpacking district. Then we negotiate, Sophia said. On won't negotiate with a waitress, and I cannot move, Sun-jun countered, gesturing to his heavily bandaged hip. He reached into his coat and produced a small, exquisitely carved jade amulet, a symbol of his rank. Take this. It's collateral, worth far more than the drugs. Tell On that Min Sun-jun sends his best new asset for aid, and that the price will be paid twofold when I return to power. Sophia took the cold jade. It felt heavy with the weight of an ancient, dangerous pact. The meatpacking district was a labyrinth of rusting metal, grime, and the lingering stench of brine and blood. Dr. On's operation was hidden beneath a defunct slaughterhouse, marked only by a flickering neon sign advertising custom butchery. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with cigar smoke and quiet menace. On was a sleek, middle-aged man in a spotless white coat, his eyes perpetually calculating. He was flanked by two enormous, silent bodyguards. A waitress, On noted, taking the jade from Sophia's extended hand and turning it over slowly, his expression shifting from contempt to sudden, sharp interest. Min Sun-jun is desperate indeed to send a stray lamb to do his bidding. I am not a lamb, I am his strategist, Sophia corrected, standing tall despite the surge of panic. He requires broad-spectrum antibiotics, 4 fluids, and a high-grade pain regimen. You know the cost. I offer this, a down payment on the future of the Black Dragon Syndicate. On chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. The Black Dragon is dead, girl. The Viper owns the streets. Why should I bet on a corpse? Because the Viper bet on trafficking children, Sophia pressed, leaning forward, using the knowledge Sun Jun had given her. That is a broken code. Sun Jun is dishonored, yes, but he is still honorable. The Viper will burn the rules and eventually turn on you. Min Sun Jun will restore order. On studied her face, her sincerity, her fierce loyalty, her lack of fear. He looked down at the jade in his hand, a tangible connection to the old, stable power. You speak well, On conceded, sliding a heavy, unmarked bag across the metal table. But if I sell you these drugs, I need collateral that walks and talks. I need a guarantee I can collect on. He nodded to his guard, who pulled out a laminated news clipping. It was a mugshot of Sophia, taken from an old college ID, superimposed over a generic police graphic. The Viper is offering a sizable bounty for the woman who helped the murderer escape the diner fire, On smirked. You owe me, Sophia Benneed. But the debt is not cash. The debt is information. You will be my eyes and ears inside the inevitable war. Do we have a deal? Sophia looked at the sterile, life-saving bag, then at the news clipping. The waitress was gone. The strategist was born. Deal, she said, her voice steady. But Min Sun Jun comes first. Always. The medicine purchased from Dr. On stabilized Sun Jun rapidly, cutting through the fever and dulling the agonizing pain. Within 48 hours, he was mobile again, though still favoring his injured side. The warehouse, however, had become too risky. On's surveillance now meant they were effectively operating on borrowed time. Sun Jun, leaning heavily on a crowbar as a cane, studied the city map spread over the hood of a dilapidated truck. On is a snake. He will sell us out when the Viper offers a better price. We need to disappear. We can't, Sophia argued, carefully changing the smallest Triplets diaper. We've been moving reactively. We need to be proactive. The Viper's strength is his network. Our strength is that he thinks you're still weak and running. And your point? Sun Jun asked, his eyes sharp. His network of assassins must have a staging point, a place he gives final orders from, she explained, tapping a point on the map near the downtown financial district. We need to hit him there. Not to kill him yet, but to shatter his confidence and buy us real time. Sun Jun looked at the woman who was seamlessly blending diaper duty with tactical analysis. He found himself admiring her audacity. You want to draw the Viper out into the open? I want to send him a message that his boss is not only alive, but is coming for him, Sophia confirmed. You create a diversion. I go in and take his command center offline. We need to make it look like a siege. They left the Triplets in a secure, prearranged drop box, a storage unit rented with On's dirty money, loaded with supplies and a high-tech monitoring system. Leaving the babies was agonizing for both of them, but they knew this was the only way to ensure their safety. The target was a skyscraper penthouse in the heart of the city, shielded by multiple layers of security. Using the information Sophia had gleaned from On about syndicate weaknesses, Sun Jun created a coordinated, devastating series of minor explosions and blackouts in the building's immediate vicinity. As sirens wailed and emergency crews swarmed the base of the tower, Sophia, dressed in black and moving with surprising agility, scaled the fire escape. She bypassed the security cameras, recalling lessons from her short-lived medical career about nerves and pressure points, now applying them to electronic locks. She reached the penthouse floor, silent and focused. Inside the luxurious, glass-walled office, 3 armed men were frantically trying to reroute communication lines. Before they could react, Sophia, using a broken piece of copper piping, struck the first 2 in quick succession, targeting the carotid arteries to incapacitate them without noise. The third man, alerted, spun around, raising his submachine gun. He wasn't one of On's low-level thugs, he was a serious operative. He recognized her instantly. The waitress, he sneered. I guess the Viper's bounty just got personal. Before he could pull the trigger, Sun Jun burst through the main service door, bleeding again from his hip, a sheer act of will powering him forward. He didn't use the gun. He used his body, tackling the operative through the glass wall of the office, sending them both tumbling out onto the narrow terrace high above the city. Sophia raced to the edge, clutching the Viper's communication console. Sun Jun was on top, brutally ending the fight with a swift, final blow. He looked up at her, blood mixing with rain on his face. Message received, he gasped, giving her a dark, triumphant smile. Now let's run before the real party arrives. The calculated chaos at the penthouse had not just sent a message, it had fractured the Viper's control. The old guard of the Black Dragon Syndicate, the high-ranking elders and council members who valued tradition and stability over the Viper's reckless brutality, were now forced to acknowledge Sun Jun's survival. They needed order restored, and they needed access to the encrypted assets the Triplets represented. 2 days later, the reckoning took place in an abandoned, opulent theater, a neutral ground for a clandestine meeting. Sun Jun arrived, supported by a heavy cane, but radiating lethal authority. Sophia walked beside him, no longer in her apron or hoodie, but dressed in dark, tailored clothing, her expression one of cool, unwavering loyalty. She wasn't hidden, she was prominently displayed. The remaining 4 council members, stiff in their traditional robes and suits, sat at a long, mahogany table. They looked at Sophia with unconcealed disdain. Min Sun Jun, the eldest, Chairman Han, began, his voice gravelly. You have broken the sacred code by involving a civilian and you nearly died. Your wife is gone, your heirs are unsecured, and your position is forfeit. The Viper, despite his flaws, maintains order. Sun Jun remained silent, letting the accusation hang in the air. This was Sophia's cue. She stepped forward, placing a sleek tablet on the table. The Viper trafficked children, Chairman. That is the highest violation of the Black Dragon Code. That dishonor, not Sun Jun's injury, forfeits his position. She tapped the screen, displaying a chilling array of encrypted documents and kill orders she'd retrieved from the penthouse server. This is the proof. The Viper intended to sell the organization's legacy and its honor for short-term profit. A murmur ran through the elders. The Viper's crime was unforgivable in their eyes. And who are you to present this evidence? Han demanded, slamming his hand on the table. A debt-ridden woman. A liability. Before Sun Jun could speak, Sophia met the chairman's furious gaze without blinking. I am the reason the chairman still has a syndicate to protect. I am the reason his heirs are alive. I saved his life, navigated your internal politics, and secured the resources needed to prove betrayal. The rules demand honor. I restored it. Han scoffed, pushing the tablet away. Your value ends when the recovery is complete. You will be paid and eliminated. Sun Jun finally moved. He didn't raise his voice or his gun. Instead, he simply reached across the table, grabbed the chairman by the lapels, and dragged the older man across the polished wood until their faces were inches apart. New rule, Sun Jun stated, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that silenced the room completely. This woman does not leave my side. She is my shield, my counsel, and the mother of my children. Anyone who argues, anyone who even looks at her with disrespect again, will be eliminated. Not by my men. By me. He released the chairman, who fell back, winded and pale. Sun Jun straightened his suit jacket, then turned to Sophia. We modernize, he continued, addressing the silent council. We restore honor. And we do it together. He extended his hand to Sophia. She took it, her fingers lacing with his, the same hand that had held a pistol to her chest just days ago, now offering her the keys to an empire. The penthouse gleamed, high above the city skyline. It was secured like a fortress, yet felt like a home. Sophia sat on the Persian rug, watching Kenji, Hiro, and Akio crawl towards a velvet dragon toy. They were fat, happy, and thriving. Sun Jun walked in, shedding his jacket, the scar on his hip a pale line beneath his crisp shirt. He didn't just rule the syndicate, He was rebuilding it, instituting new codes of conduct with Sophia as his silent, fierce partner in every meeting. She looked from the 3 crawling babies to the man who was now her protector and her future. Sophia Benny, the waitress, had found her purpose, not in saving lives in a sterile hospital, but in building a new dynasty in the blood and fire of a criminal world. She had traded her red apron for a crown, forged in love and necessity.